Welcome back to the Castos YouTube channel. Today we're going to take a quick overview of Castos Analytics. These are the analytics and reports that are going to show you how and where your podcast listeners listen to your podcast episodes. We're going to take a look at a very small podcast that I personally produce over here on the south coast of Massachusetts. It's called the We Are Here podcast, southcoast.fm if you're in that neck of the woods. We're going to take a look at the analytics. So once you're logged into your Castos dashboard, head on up to the analytics tab. And by default, it's going to take a look at the last 90 days of your podcast. I'm a big believer that, yeah, sure, there's those first few hours that your podcast goes live where you want to see where everyone is listening or how many people are listening. But I think with podcasts, especially if you have a lot of listeners in your audience that listen to a lot of podcasts, sometimes just think of yourself. I listen to podcast episodes maybe 3 days after they're launched, sometimes weeks after that they're launched. So a nice 90-day overview, from my opinion, is a strong way to look at the health of an overall podcast, especially if you do lots of podcasts. So a few things about the analytics page that we're on. At any point, you can export these stats to PDF. So if you're in like a marketing team and you want to report this to the rest of the team, you can quickly print out a PDF, share a PDF without having them have access to the Castos dashboard. Or if you're crunching numbers in a spreadsheet, doing something else, you can export these into a CSV. You can always change the date range. We're not going to do that in this video, but you can change the date range if you want something more specific. And then you can filter by a podcast if you have many different podcasts that you're hosting out of Castos. Fun fact, you can host unlimited podcasts out of your Castos account. So you can have a show about sports, you can have a show about cooking, you can have a show about technology, it doesn't matter. You can host it all out of your Castos account. By default, it's going to show it for everything. Performance for all podcasters. And for like 98% of us, we only have one podcast. So last 90 days are all time. And then, of course, you can see by total listens by that date range are charted below. So the obvious spikes are when new shows go out or when new promotional materials go out. I know from the cadence of my shows that generally these smaller blips are more promotional events. Like I had a podcast launch and then I retweeted it, put it on another Facebook page, in an email newsletter or something of that sort. And then the bigger spikes are actually when the episodes go out. So you can kind of find the patterns visually to understand where your show is at. Total listeners and downloads, this count right here, this number right here, is the total of that last 90 days. So this chart is charting out 658 downloads over the course of that 90 days. And then same thing, last 90 days, we'll click on the top episodes tab. This is by listen count. So how many listens do we think you had? And we say we think because don't forget, this is cross-platform. This is playing in website players on somebody's computer. It's playing in iTunes. It's playing in Stitcher. It's playing in Spotify. Well, I shouldn't say Spotify. Spotify is a different analytics beast altogether, but it's playing in various areas. So when somebody downloads a file, well, they could listen to it 3 times. We don't know what happens after somebody accesses your file. And you can see here, this is just charted out by the top listens within those first 90 days. Listening methods. So where are people listening to this? Predominantly, largely, I guess depends on the audience, Apple Podcasts. I'd imagine if you were doing a technology show that covered Google, this second one right here, podcast, which is Google's, would be top in line. But you can kind of see where this all breaks down. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, mobile Safari. So they didn't even play it in a player. They just played it right in their iOS browser, Chrome, etc. Sort of speaks for itself there as it breaks down by browser and application type. OS and devices, of course, operating system. So what computer operating system or mobile operating system is somebody accessing your podcast on? And then, of course, which devices, if it's broken down by that. And then Spotify Launch has its own tab. It's just the way that we can access Spotify reporting information or reporting data. So when you do click on the Spotify link, it's going to pull up a different window, right, for total listens. And you have the same controls in terms of the date range and which podcast. We'll go back. Geographic stats. Right now we're reporting by the country chart, or I should say the country first is the chart that you see here. And then you can say show city chart, and that'll break down the cities in which the data that we're compiling is charting out. So we can see the top cities. And, this is a particular hyper local podcast to just my area, and the cities and towns around my area are right at the top. So very important there. The last tab, the listener info tab, is going to show us some of the most popular episodes that were listened to right out of publication. So the unique listeners is going to show you unique listeners that our stats have deemed to be, unique listeners over the whole entire lifespan of your podcast. So this particular podcast, we're saying that we have reached 1,390 unique listeners. This is individuals. This isn't listens. This is individuals who have accessed the podcast. And then we have a subscriber formula, which I'll link in the YouTube video description below. And it's a unique sort of secret sauce formula that we feel we're putting a number on how many dedicated listeners we have for your podcast. We call them subscribers. This might change in the future, but we're saying that you have at least 65 listeners who are dedicated listening to almost every show. And there's an equation, there's a formula behind it, there's an equation that we calculate, and we say, we think that this show gets 65 dedicated people who will not miss an episode. And that is it for the listeners tab. So again, you can export this stuff at any time to PDF or CSV. You can really drill down to see where your shows are being accessed and how many downloads each episode's getting. And it's also in the same individual episode. So if you were to go to your view episodes and then click on the stats icon, it'll drill it down to just this episode. So if you just want to see, hey, what's this one episode doing? You can just return to your episode list and grab that information right there. Click that link. It'll show you exactly what this episode did. In this case, 161 downloads over the last 90 days that this one has been out. If you have any questions about Castos, head on over to Castos.com. Click on the little chat bubble below. If you're already a customer, you want to have a question with us, shoot us a little message through the same bubble. You can chat with us any way you want. hello@Castos.com. Check out our academy that's coming. academy.castos.com. It's academy.castos.com. If you want to level up your podcasting game, you want to get a little bit better as a podcaster, check out the Academy. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stuff like this. Podcasting, streaming, content creation, marketing, video stuff. That's what we do here at the YouTube channel over on Castos, youtube.com/Castos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.